This is our program, Art Viewing Adventures, and we've got a great show today. I'm going to start the slides, and great to see so many people tuning in. Maybe many of you have been to this exhibition, which is at the De Lempicka at De Young. It's there. What's the closing date? Does anyone know offhand when the closing date is for this? It's pretty soon, right? It's another
It's
couple
on
of
one
weeks.
of
I
the
thought
slides,
it was
Rodney.
February 9th.
Yeah, February 9th. And I'm joined by my fellow museum guides, Charlie Goldberg. Welcome to Art Viewing Adventures. Welcome back, Charlie, and Verena, Lukas. And we're gonna just jump in. We've got a lot of paintings to show you guys, so we're gonna go through a lot of stuff. And we're going to start by telling you this is like a really exciting time to be following the career of this great artist. This is like the Google Doodle for her 120th birthday. I guess that was last year, and just like all kinds of artwork. And then there's a full-length movie about her, a mini series because she was like just had this extraordinary life, living in so many places, interacting with so many people, musical, and the longest running play in Los Angeles, Tamara, the Living Movie. And tell you a little bit about her. Tamara is pronounced not Tamara, but Tamara de Lempicka. But she was born Maria Gorska. And there's some question about what her birth date was. And she kind of hid some of her origins. She is of Jewish descent, but she didn't really want people to know that. She converted, I believe, her parents converted and she converted really as a child, and always identified as Catholic. And then, question of where she was born, but it's believed she was, I believe, born in Warsaw, but also she spent time in Russia. And her father was Boris Gerwig Gorsky, who was a Russian Jew and an attorney. And her mother was a Polish Jewish socialite. But her father left the family when she was 5. And she had a lot of connections through her grandparents with a very elite group of society. And that's going to be very important. She's going to kind of run in very elite circles and be drawn to kind of aristocratic class people. Charlie, Verena, anything you want to add to that?
Yeah, just when I was on a tour of Lempicka, the tour guide said, what Tamara wants, Tamara gets. And that is basically a thing to know about Tamara. She got everything she ever wanted.
Yeah, she had very strong feelings about what she wanted. She was, you could even say she was kind of a selfish person, but also a very, very interesting one. Her family sent her to a boarding school in Lausanne, Switzerland, but she didn't like it very much. And her grandmother took her out of school and took her to many of the great art galleries of Europe. So she's very, very influenced by kind of the classics of European art. And we'll see in the slides you're going to be looking at parallels between classic works of art and the artwork that she's going to create. She moves to Russia, and at 15 she meets this guy Tadeusz Lempicki, who's a wealthy man, and they will end up getting married. But he's going to get in trouble with the Bolsheviks after the Bolshevik Revolution. He gets arrested, and Tamara uses her sexual wiles to seduce a Swedish diplomat and get him released. And they will leave Russia with pretty much just nothing but the jewels she can take with her, and relocate to Paris. But I think it's really interesting that, she sees herself, she's a very modern woman, and she sees like using her sexuality as an important tool that can get her what she wants. How about that? Anything you want to add to that, Verena or Charlie?
No, that was very good.
And in Paris, this is when she changes her name to Tamara de Lempicka, which has a more aristocratic sound. So she's gonna, it makes it sound like she's from some, ducky or something. And she is gonna need to make money. She's gonna use her art to make money for her family.
Wait, that I love that comment though. It's the first time in the history of the world that anyone said, I'm going to make money by becoming an artist. I think it's really hilarious.
I mean,
Yeah.
it's a way she's very original, right? That she's like, this is, in another era, you, especially a woman, couldn't have,
Yeah, there's an arrogance to that, isn't it?
yeah, or an assertiveness or something. She doesn't think the normal rules apply to her.
No.
She's going to be studying the classics with an art teacher, and she is going to be a little bit limited in what she can do being a woman. So she's not going to be doing nudes from like in-person models, but she is. We'll see in the exhibition. She does do a lot of nudes in her career. She particularly likes the work of the mannerists. And so here's an example of a painting we can compare one of her works to. So this is the Madonna of the Long Neck from Parmigianino, I'm sorry. And this is her portrait that she does in 1930, which you can see like some real parallels between like well, tell us like Charlie, how you see the comparison between these two.
Well, the most obvious comparisons are, the Mannerists really love to elongate things. It was a particular style of the late Renaissance. So in other words, you look at that baby Jesus who looks like, it's like a 6-year-old on her lap, rather than a baby, really, really elongated. More than anything else, her neck is very, very elongated. And you see the Lempicka using that style over and over and over again. But look at the way that the hands are, and compare that to the left hand of Mrs. Bott that he does. That's a very, very Renaissance way to display the hand, and you'll see her use that over and over again.
Yeah, I think hands we'll see in some of these other paintings, hands are a really interesting um, part of her work. And then you talked about we talk about like this is a time of cubism. Cubism is really important. It's going to be a big influence on Art Deco design, and Art Deco is going to be kind of integral to her best paintings. But this is like you can call it soft cubism. So it's not so much like the Picasso cubism. Anything you want to add to that, Charlie?
No, it's just that Denis and Lot were both very, very influential in her work. I don't know that you necessarily see that with the one on the right. I just love the palette that Lot is using on the one on the right. But the one on the left, you'll see when she's doing backgrounds, they're not dissimilar to what Lot is doing in this particular French landscape.
So yeah, the this one is the lot in yeah, it's a great choice of colors in both paintings. Um, and then meanwhile, after this immigration to France, her husband refuses to work, and it really kind of she's really doing all the work to keep them from keep them in the style to which they become accustomed. And she has a great breakthrough in 1925 where she shows her paintings at the International Exposition of Modern Decorative Industrial Arts. And she's going to get recognition and be able to start selling her paintings. And she's only 24 years old. And this is a painting of a woman named Ira Perot, who will become her lover and will appear in many of her paintings. So tell me, Verena and Charlie, what about this painting do you find interesting and appealing?
Well, one thing we have to really tell everybody is that she was definitely bisexual and
Yes.
that she had a lot of affairs with women just as much as with men.
Yep, she is not monogamous at all. She is going to have affairs with a lot of people of both genders. Um, this painting, I have to say, this is one of many examples where the colors are just extraordinary. This blue really, really draws you in. The folds are really well done. And then look at her lips, the contrast of the blue in the red in the skin tones. In
This
the
was
eye, too.
also her longest lasting lover.
Yes, this is a relationship that's going to last for a long time. And so, her marriage isn't going that great. Um, she's going to meet some aristocratic people that are going to kind of help her start to make money with her art. He's this guy, Count Emmanuel Castel Barco, is going to have a solo exhibition of her work, and she's going to work really hard, complete 28 pieces in 6 months.
Yeah, and that just really gives a sense of how hardworking she was. If you're Jackson Pollock, to put out 28 pieces in 6 months is not a big deal. But with the kind of painting that she does, it's very, very exacting. That's a lot of work.
Yeah, a
She's
lot of.
very, very hardworking.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, she's like, yeah, really driven. Like, I think like she wants to do her painting and maybe get out in society when she can, and then have these affairs. That's kind of like her whole life. Which is kind of interesting when we think about this painting, because this is a painting of her daughter, Kizette at the Balcony, and it wins first prize in this exhibition, Internationale des Beaux-Arts in Bordeaux. And what about, like, what do you guys like about this image of hers?
Well, for me, this is one of those paintings where you really start to see her develop her true style. The one that we saw of Ira Perot, that's not the sort of mature Lempicka that we're used to seeing later. Here you start to see this very, very cubist urban background, next to her daughter here by the balcony. So she's really starting to develop her own style here.
Yeah, yeah, and then the composition of this is really interesting. I like the diagonal of the placement of her daughter.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Verena, you're a photographer. What do you think of the cropping on this painting?
Personally, I like tight crops. She generally, in all her work, she's cropping very tightly, taking sometimes half an arm off, half a head off, half a foot off. And I think it works very, very well with her stuff because you concentrate here on Gizette and on nothing else except maybe the background.
Yep. I think the exhibition did a great job in giving this thing first prize. And here's another view of it. And also kind of an interesting way of portraying your own daughter, because she has a certain sexual allure to her. And look at the hands. She's doing interesting things with the hands. Here is another painting of her daughter. This one will win the bronze medal in the International Exposition in Poland. Um, and it's kind of interesting to note, like, this is kind of hiding her Jewish identity, showing her daughter getting communion. And her daughter, Kizette, later said that she didn't remember ever having a communion. So kind of interesting that she makes that choice. What do you guys like about this image?
It's just all lines, all white. It concentrates directly onto her face and onto her eyes that are up into heavens. And just the white robe she's wearing. I think it's a wonderful painting. I really happen to like this a lot.
What about you, Charlie?
Well, I do want to point out, I hope everyone sees the dove in the top left corner,
Good, Charlie.
that's lifting up that. And she really becomes a master of material, how she does dresses and scarves. And I think, here she's doing it in white. And, it's very masterfully done.
Yeah, I also really like the skin tones. It's just wonderful contrast in this. And then, and I have to say, Charlie put these slides together, and what a wonderful parallel you draw between this Virgin in Prayer from 1640 and the Cazette Communion painting.
Right. I just chose this one particular example by Il Sassoferrato, but you can see I could have put 20 paintings to the
Right,
left that all sort of mimic these religious paintings that you would have seen in Italy.
right.
And then here's another painting of Cazette in pink. And Charlie, you pointed out that you can see these waves. So you got these ships in the background, and you can see these waves kind of reflected almost like they're in a window or something. It's really uh, interesting the way she portrays this. And then, so what do we think of this image of her daughter?
Well, again, very sexualized, here she is. She's obviously a prepubescent girl, but she's giving us this come hither look. It's such an odd thing for a mother to paint, their daughter in this kind of very sexualized way.
And she also makes her look almost older. She doesn't really look like the young girl she still is, and she's always serious. I have never seen Kizette smile in any one of Lempicka's paintings.
Well, if
Yeah,
you had Lempicka for a mother, you wouldn't smile much either. But one of the
Very
things
good, Charlie.
you'll start to see is the angularity. Notice how
Yeah.
the right shoulder is way higher than left shoulder. And someone points out that she's missing a shoe. And that also has this kind of almost like a sexual theme to it. There is reference to another painting which we actually cut, but where there's a similar pose between this and the other painting. But you're right, she is missing a shoe.
yeah, it's just really interesting portrayal and just a classic, I think. And so here's where we do talk about her as a mother, and there are some problems there. Um, she definitely puts her career before her responsibilities as a parent. She often doesn't acknowledge that she has a child. She sends her daughter to boarding schools or has her live with relatives. And according to Cazette, Lempicka also had a killer instinct. She was shrewd and determined and had a heightened sense of self promotion. So it's all about me.
Yeah. Another thing about this is that at many times she was very vain. She called her daughter her sister because she did not want people to see that she actually was old enough to have a daughter. The way she also changed her birth date by 10 years.
Right. Now, the other thing we should, at least acknowledge is, I don't think anyone talks about if Picasso was a good dad or not. Do you know what I mean? There's any number of male painters who abandoned their families and weren't good fathers. But, this was the time. It was expected for women to play a maternal role, which she rejected.
Peter and Kevin says she sounds similar to Trump.
So true.
Well, oh,
And yes, she was an only
that's
child.
Yes.
was and so she might not have been the best mother, but she does seem to have gotten her daughter one of the very first hula hoops, right? That's pretty cool. It's long way before its time. So she is hobnobbing in Paris with all kinds of elite people. She's got a wonderful painting in the exhibition of Andre Gide, Colette, Picasso, um, Jean Cocteau, and she starts participating in women's only afternoons with Natalie Barney, who is one of these elite women. And from this, she will get commissions to do portraits. And it's also going to be interesting that she does have these strong relationships with other women. Her desire to capitalize on her social connections will create a niche for her portraiture, and she'll get a lot of commissions from well-to-do cosmopolitan people. So here's a picture of her portrait of the Duchess of LaSalle. And let's talk about that painting.
Oh, go to the next slide,
Yeah,
because
yeah.
I think this painting deserves a lot of attention. As far as I'm concerned, this is a brilliant portrait, but it's very transgressive, right? We see a woman in typically male clothing at the time. You know, she's got her shirt open to her belly button practically. She's got these, long boots, polished leather boots, and she's striking what we would typically see as a male pose. You know, her hair is cropped short, and yet at the same time, she puts this unbelievably strong, rich red color in there. I mean, this is a really powerful, confrontive pose. And again, speaks to that kind of sexual fluidity that was true certainly of Lempicka. I don't know about this particular woman, but it certainly speaks of Lempicka. And it's a bold choice.
It makes me wonder, and I don't know the answer to this, were there any connections between her and Gertrude Stein? Because you'd think maybe Gertrude Stein would really like a painting like this.
I don't recall reading about any of them, but but they would have known many of the same people. So,
Yeah.
And then the background's really great. This almost strikes me as almost a surreal painting with this stairway with these kind of miniature buildings in the background. It's really interesting. And then you, Charlie, wanted to draw, here's a nice contrast to, she's got this really assertive looking woman wearing what could be men's clothing, especially for that time. I mean, women didn't wear suits like that back then. In comparing that to a John Singer Sargent portrayal of a woman.
Yeah, so he would have been just the prior generation. So I just thought it was, it's just good to show context of what people were sort of expecting out of portraits and how transgressive the one on the left is.
And I imagine that really gets quite a stir. Here's another really striking painting, the Marquis Somni. And really, I guess he's almost wearing a similar suit to the one we just saw in the previous, right? But this is kind of like a male figure with a very cubist portrayal. What else do you guys see in this painting?
Well, again, you see that angularity of the shoulders that we saw her developing early on in that painting of Cosette. One of the things that she does here, which I think is so wonderful, again, very painterly, is if you follow his right hand, what does it point to? Points to her signature. So she very deliberately puts the signature in the middle of the painting rather than at the bottom, which is where we're sort of traditionally thinking of artists' signatures.
Well, is this not a bad time to mention that she's very good at self-promotion?
Yeah.
She's not going to miss an opportunity. She kind of needs to be, because she's doing this to make the money to enable her to A, survive, and B, maybe live among the elite. But she's very good at this, and you have to believe she would have known how to navigate social media if she were around in our day.
So yeah, Sarah mentions that he's not looking at us, and that's really common in her work. They often are looking elsewhere.
I would love to buy this painting and give it to David Byrne of the Talking Heads. Stop making sense. Yeah, he'd love that suit. I think he might actually wear that suit in some of their videos. So here's another one of these really interesting portrayals. This in kind of formal wear.
In this painting, just go back for a second, it just really exudes sexuality. It just, we have a direct gaze. It's this, his crotch is basically staring out at us. in this painting. And, what's interesting too is that we have seen in the other paintings of hers urban backgrounds, cubist urban backgrounds. And here she has a cubist floral, not, a pastoral background, which I think is really interesting.
In this, Charlie, is the period when she's really cranking out a lot of work.
Oh, yeah. And, these are all countesses, marquises. She has, commissions by kings and queens. She's really getting her name out there.
And Doris says he's got strange fingers. Again,
Yep.
it
And
doesn't
you'll
bring
see
the
that
right
over and
words.
over again.
Marcus says that man looks so stunning. And forgive me if I'm trying to keep up with the chat, but we're getting, so keep the comments coming in chat. We really appreciate them. This is a painting. I just love this one. I love the color of the blue suit. I love the view of his eyes, the staircase. But Verena, Charlie, what are your thoughts on this?
The blue color is an amazing, that's something she always does. She has amazing color. She has such a wonderful color sense. This is not a normal blue that you really see. This is almost hitting you right in the in the brain. Another thing,
neon. Yeah.
Charlie.
Oh, I completely agree. Her choice of colors for the clothing are just impeccable, one after another. And what I love is how the stairway, if you start at the top of the stairway, it really leads you down into the painting because it almost parallels his arm, which is, of course, caught in his pocket. It's just a great way to make us move throughout the canvas.
Yeah. Great framing. I think, Charlie, you mentioned when we talked about this, like he kind of makes you think maybe of a young Peter Lorre.
Yes, exactly.
Just like, who is this guy? What's he about? The Marquis de Afflito. And then this is a painting of her husband, at the time husband. They're not going to be married much longer. And it's not entirely finished. You can kind of see that in the hand over here, that it's kind of gray. And, he looks like a pretty powerfully built man. He looks very alluring, but also, I don't know, he doesn't look very happy. So what are your thoughts on this painting, Charlie?
Because basically he wasn't a very happy man. He really did not take much care of her. He didn't have a job when they were in Paris. So they were living on her money and on her paintings. And the relationship really didn't last much longer than this painting.
Anything to add to that, Charlie?
No, I just think it's a very powerful portrait, though. Again, when you think about, the history of portraiture, who are the people who were getting portraits? Kings, queens, rulers, generals. That you want to be showing that sense of power, and this certainly has that sense of power. You see those strong, broad shoulders. He's looking at us. He's got a very chiseled face. Paco mentions that he looks all wrapped up, and of course you've got that cubist urban background behind. He's sort of king of the realm, if you will.
And Sarah says maybe he's saying, "I'll be leaving soon."
Yeah.
Maybe that's his glove. That's why his hand looks like that. And this is not every single one of these paintings is in the exhibition, but this one is.
And there's a comment about it being dark and colorless. Yeah, I think that might speak to their relationship, that they had at that point.
Yeah, that's a good, like the mood of this is a very dark mood. Not long after this is completed, they're going to divorce, and she's going to meet this guy, Baron Raoul Kufner. First, he asks her to do a painting of his mistress. And then she does that, but she also has an affair with him and marries him in 1934. And she will become known after she marries him as the Baroness with the Brushes. And here's the painting he does of Kufner's mistress. What do you guys think? Is this a flattering painting? Do you think she liked this painting? Kind
No, it's not flattering. In a way, it's quite ugly. If I was the woman, I would not be very happy to be shown like this.
Yeah, I find this a god-awful painting, to tell you the truth. But it does have interesting elements in it. So, look at her hands again. There you see these kinds of poses with Renaissance painting, where one finger is out, for example, or another hand might be turned over. But I don't particularly like this painting, but she does better. Let's put it that way.
yeah. And then this is a painting that a self-portrait actually, that she does um, behind the wheel of a green Bugatti, and it's not actually her car, but she kind of makes it look like it's hers. And she says, "I was always dressed like a car, and the car like me." And the New York Times called, Charlie, is this New York Times quote about the painting?
About her.
About her.
Yeah.
Yep.
So really great painting of her. And then there's a detail that you want to call out, Charlie, that she puts her initials on the car as if it really were her car. So right down here, next to the handle. But this is what her actual car looked like. She drove a yellow Renault. So she didn't drive that car.
Go back just a second, Rodney. I mean, there's just a couple of things about this painting that I have to point out. This painting almost symbolizes the Deco era in that it's all about cars, it's all about speed. She's confrontive. She's looking right at us. She's in control, not only, not only with her look, but she's got her hands on the steering wheel. So, it really becomes sort of like a manifesto for powerful women during this period, which is why this painting was so adored.
Yeah, it is a new modern way of looking at women. Driving her car. We saw that actually. Mary Cassatt has a painting in which an aristocratic woman is driving her. It's back when they have horses, but driving the carriage, and the coachman is in the back seat, kind of turned the other way. So this is kind of another step forward where women are driving the car. This is what her car actually looked like. But this was done for the German magazine Die Dame.
Die Dame.
Die Dame, sorry, it's good. Sorry, we have a native German speaker on. I should have let you do that, Verena. Die Dame.
Die Dame.
Die Dame.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I get the French stuff right, but I don't get the German stuff right. And like you said, John, you said, Charlie, it's the kind of definition of Deco art. We got the confrontive gaze. She's very self-assured, sexual, and it kind of makes us think of futurist art, such as this motorcycle that is done by this Italian artist. It was kind of so this is Italian futurism. And Charlie, there was a lot of this, right?
Oh yeah, there were the futurists were all about how to create speed in a two-dimensional form. And this is just one example that I saw, and it's just sort of, yes, it's a man on a motorcycle, but the focus is on the motorcycle and the power of the machinery and how fast it's going.
Yeah, and today we would think about, well, yeah, but this guy's just about to hit major traffic if it was in San Francisco. So that's our view of that world now. So we had talked before about how like hardworking she was. She's a workaholic. She has 9-hour painting sessions, only stopping for such necessities as champagne, a massage, and a bath, and maybe time with her lovers. And she smoked a lot of cigarettes.
God.
And Valerian is what, Charlie?
That's a sleep product that was popular at the time.
She's taking
Because
sleep.
you can only imagine, and there's actually some history of her drug use as well, that cocaine was often used at these sessions, and so you can imagine that she would have had to use the valerian to calm herself down at night to be able to sleep.
She would have fit right into the summer of love, I think, if she'd been born a little later.
Yes.
So here's another one of these commissions. This is a royal commission, the portrait of the Grand Duke Gavril Konstantinovich, who was a Russian aristocrat, right? And then he's in exile in France when she does this painting. And let's talk about this. Like, this is a really
Go to
extraordinary.
the next slide.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
there we
yeah,
go.
let's talk about this image. So Charlie, what is it that strikes you about this?
Well, again, power, right? How are you displaying power? And he's got all the trappings that you would expect. He's got the braids across his tunic there. He's got a sash there. And there's a painting that we'll show in just a minute, which really this borrows from, in a way. Oh, and the sword, of course. He's got the sword as well. But again, look at the angularity of the shoulders. Look at that sharp diagonal that comes from the right across that white portion of a building or a wall or something like that. She's all about these different angles.
Yeah, and also the expression on his face is real. It's another person who's not smiling for sure. But yeah, let's do this comparison. Cosimo the Elder with these incredible reds. So it seems like a very knowing parallel.
Right. So the hands are sort of similar. Instead of a white piece of paper in the bushes, there's this white sash. So there's just she's constantly looking back at these old masters as a basis for what she then transposes into her own style.
Yeah, and Paco says he kind of sees the sense of exile in this painting here. Also, I kind of feel like there's some photographic detail in her rendition. Really, really well done. And this is what I'm
Yeah,
forgetting
that's what he really looked like. So
what
you
he
can
really
see.
looked like. So she really did capture him because it's kind of weird looking face, but he was kind of an odd looking guy. So here's another one of these aristocrats, the Georgian Prince Aristov.
Go to the bigger image on the next slide. So for me, I just love this particular portrait, which I think is so great. This guy has a little bit of world weariness in his eyes. Again, we've got that cropping off of the head, which is, of course, from the influence of photography. Like if you had done this portrait in the 17th century, they would have said, "What are you doing?" I mean, it would have made no sense to leave the head off. But because, we're in the 20th century here, where they've seen lots and lots of photographs and people cutting off body parts, it's not jarring for people to look at that. But the other thing I really love is that little slice of red that she puts on his lapel pin there, which is a little hard to see in this light, but again, powerful.
Yeah, and it kind of draws your eye, right? That's where your eye is first drawn, is to that red horizontal line.
There's a question about the spelling of what? I couldn't see what the rest of that.
Her name. Her name is
Her
different.
Oh yeah,
name.
she does that. She does. You'll see her name spelled differently in some of these paintings. I noticed that spelling in some of the earlier ones.
That's why she, for instance, does not do Tamara. In the beginning, she really liked to seem like a man, because if she was a man, she would be selling more and people would be liking her more. Since she was a woman, she only later on came into Tamara de Lempicka.
Right.
Kind of like Jada Bale.
Lempicka is the male version of that,
Right.
of that name.
So here, this is a real interesting painting. You've got this very Art Deco with the buildings in the background. But Charlie, I think you were struck by the mandolin, that she's holding a mandolin.
Right. In 1920s, early 30s, I'm not sure that one sees a mandolin necessarily, but this is really hearkening back to a trope among, Renaissance and post-Renaissance artists, especially the Dutch, love to do these sort of tropes of someone playing an instrument. And there's an example that we can show in just a minute. Go ahead to the next
Next.
slide. Yeah, there
Yep.
we go. And I just chose this one by Ter Brueggen. You know, there's lots and lots of these. You know, if you go to any of the museums in Holland, you know, this is what you would see. And you know, playing a musical instrument, you know, there's a sort of code that we've lost. We don't understand this code anymore. But musical instruments were associated with sex, and seduction. And so instead of, well, I shouldn't say instead of, because there are many, many paintings of women playing instruments that are often seen in brothels, for example, where again, that idea of here's the symbol that there's sex going on in, you know, somewhere in the scene. Like if you look at a lot of Vermeer's paintings, there's a lot of instruments that are going on in those paintings, you know. And so, you know, by choosing the mandolin, which is a little bit closer to the lute, I just think it's, you know, she's again making a nod. Sarah had a comment which is gone.
That is, I wanted to get into that comment that that Madonna, our Madonna, is using a lot of the outfits that Lempicka has used in her paintings. And the thing is, Madonna is one of the greatest collectors of Tamara de Lempicka and Barbara Streisand.
Yeah. Let's keep going. We've got lots more to get through.
I just wanted to point out that, you know, this is what I mean by soft cubism. On the right, we have this Picasso, which is this very traditional cubism. You can see how she softens that up, you know, and that's that Andre Lot's influence there.
Yep. I have to say, I really like what she does with that. And then, we were going to talk about the portrait of Dr. Burckhardt, but here's Dr. Charlie Goldberg.
Charlie.
Yeah, Kaiser would not, you know, spring for a better portrait, which I was pretty disappointed in, you know, so I had to settle for this one.
Also, wouldn't you like this for your lab coat?
I would indeed like it for my lab coat.
And then this is so Burckhardt was a patron of hers, and this is a portrait of his wife. Really, really nicely done.
Again, look at the material. Look at that fur, the way she renders her fur. Look at that white dress, the way she gets the folds in the white dress. We're talking about masterful use of light to create these effects.
Yeah, and she's a great painter. And again, we said at the very beginning of the program, like we've got, you know, Mary Cassatt and Amy Sherald going at the same time. And these are just three masters that we're seeing from completely different periods. And then here's a portrait of the daughter of Dr. Burckhardt.
Right. He became an important patron for her.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Again, look at the hands. Those are very Renaissance hands, especially the left hand, you know, the way it's kind of, that's not a natural pose, at least for my hand, you know, but it's something that you see in Renaissance paintings all the time.
And all the fingers are always so incredibly long.
Yeah, she likes elongating.
Yeah, she does.
Again, think of the Mannerists, right?
What do you mean by Renaissance hands? Where they are? Because I just can't get over all the cubism. So what do you mean?
Yep.
So we have a question about the, you know, calling it Renaissance. Charlie, so what is it about it that makes you draw that parallel?
When you look at a lot of Renaissance paintings, especially Mannerist paintings, you know, which is late Renaissance, you know, the hands are not the way you see artists paint hands now. They tend to have sort of, like, I don't know that I can put my hand in the position of her left hand, for example. It's, you know, the way some of the, like, there's two joints that bend up, third joint that's straight, fourth one that's up. Try that yourselves at home. It's a little bit tricky to do, you know, and yet something that you see all the time in Renaissance paintings is odd sort of postures of hands. And this is something that she's definitely doing very, very deliberately.
Right. Thanks for that question. Let's keep going. So now we're going to talk about her nudes and the female gaze. So nudes we've had throughout, at least since the Renaissance, lots of nudes in art history, but they're almost always done by men, of women. But like here's a reclining nude who's half, she's got some covering. And what makes you call this the female gaze, Charlie?
Well, again, Lempicka was bisexual, so that when we're looking at this model, she's sexualizing this model. I mean, this is a very, very sensuous portrait of this particular woman. And so we're used to seeing men looking at women and drawing and painting women. We weren't so used to looking at paintings of women painting women as in a sexual way. I mean, one of the things that you need to know about her is she slept with most of her subjects, male or female, and you really have this sense almost of like a postcoital moment. But I think this painting is just so wonderful. Her rendition of the sofa that she's on is just fabulous. She renders that green, but then the shadowed green as well. And then if you look at the eyes, there's sort of a similar tone to them. And it's just, it's really a terrific painting.
Yeah. Let's keep going. So here, this is one of the most extraordinary paintings, I think, in the whole exhibition, La Belle Raffaella. And so this is a very sexual painting.
Right. Go to the next one for a second. And Raffaella was a prostitute that Lempicka had on and off relationships with. But here is this overtly sexual pose. She's got her hand on her breast there. Again, she looks like she may have just, finished pleasuring herself. But if you look at the technique of this painting, it's just remarkable. And one of the things that she's using here is chiaroscuro. And for people who aren't familiar with that particular term, chiaroscuro is that line between what's dark and what's light. And so if you look along the south part of her belly there's this very, very strong line separating what's dark, what's light. And then the other thing I have to point out here is look at how we see the red of the cloth by her legs, the red of the cloth by her hands, the red of her lips, and then the red of the carpet. So what she's doing is she's using color to make our eyes scan this entire painting. It's really brilliant. And you don't even have to use the red. Just use the light skin tones, and you end up going from one spot to another in the painting. It's brilliant composition.
I almost wish we had a slide of Caravaggio, because Caravaggio.
Well, we have a Caravaggio.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
See?
So
That's very
it
good.
just so
I mean,
happens.
the
Yeah.
light, etc. Good. I didn't even.
So I chose this Caravaggio more because of the similarity in stance. But Caravaggio was really a master of chiaroscuro, as we'll look in the next slide.
Right.
The next slide is one of the most famous of his painting, where you see, what Caravaggio is doing is, he's using that contrast between light and dark by he's telling us a story that God is speaking directly to St. Matthew through this light. So that's what Caravaggio was so famous for and so brilliant at. But you look at the painting on the right and that she has studied Caravaggio's paintings.
Yeah.
Yeah. Paco comments, she just is incredibly vivid.
Oh, it's really, this is one of my favorite paintings in the exhibit.
Yeah. And then here's a group of 4 nudes. And just another example of the female gaze. She's portraying women in a very sexual way.
And this is another one where go back for just a second. This is another one where you really need to think photographically, think of how she has cropped this painting. This painting, the walls, of the painting look like they're coming in. It's kind of like those old spy movies, where you have to kind of hold the walls separately because they're about to crush you. She is not giving any quarter to there. And by doing that, she's emphasizing the sexuality of this painting. There's no breathing room. These women are one on top of the other, in lusty embrace. This is not just for women that are being displayed.
And the faces of the women almost look very orgasmic.
Yes.
Yeah.
I mean, as if they're just coming out of a sexual contact. It's an incredible sexual painting.
Yeah,
And then
this is not in the exhibit, I don't think.
There's a lot of other nudes in the exhibit, but we thought we'd compare this one with some other famous nude portrayals that are quite different.
Right. So Ingres, Denis was the one who said, you've got to follow, you've got to study Ingres, who was so important in his teaching of Lempicka, of how to paint. But, so here we have, there's women frolicking about with each other. It doesn't have that closeness. You can see how this one has breathing room. You look at Lempicka's portrayal, it's completely compressed, but it's a direct nod to Ingres that she does here.
Yeah, I do note a musical instrument in the Ingres.
Well, there you go.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And then this comparison to the Picasso, the Demoiselle de Marseille.
Avignon.
Of Avignon. So very different portrayal. And then a quote from de Lempicka: "I live life in the margins of society, and the rules of normal society don't apply to those who live on the fringe."
Right. And that's the way she saw herself. She saw herself as not your usual mother, not your usual painter, not your usual sexual person.
Yeah.
Actually, Sarah has a really interesting question. She asks whether there is a fifth woman at the bottom of the picture. She cannot figure out where the rest of the body is of the woman in the forefront. And that is something Lempicka really does. It keeps you guessing.
Yeah, and then Charlie pointed out that I guess is it this one of the models is the former mistress.
Not in her era. Yeah.
Yeah.
We saw that painting before. Yeah, that's to the left.
Another nude, more tight cropping, really interesting elongated features.
And again, this is Deco. If you think about the period before, which would have been Art Nouveau, you have these very light, airy, silky women, right? Here, this woman is strong, powerful. Look at her thighs, look at her arms. Her arms are bigger than mine. And this is Deco. And do we have the slide of the comparison? Yeah.
Stackpole.
Here we have Ralph Stackpole, really important Deco sculptor, and you can see how strong these women's bodies are. On the right, we have Alphonse Mucha, who is probably the most prominent artist of women during the Art Nouveau period. And you can see just how light and airy.
Yeah.
You look at Lempicka's in the middle, that's a solid woman.
Yeah, and the Stackpole, of course, is from the Pacific Stock Exchange in San Francisco. So something some of us see from time to time. So Lempicka will gain great renown. She'll become the most reported and photographed artist of her day. In the late 30s, she goes through a depression and paints little. What she does paint tends to be more religious. Busts of Mary, people praying. This will be in the final gallery of the exhibition at the De Young. Here she is getting one of her models.
And this is the time, I think, when her painting is sort of going down. It's not as good anymore as the ones before. There is that cut-off point that seems to be right here.
And this is a notable painting because it is of It's of I'm sorry.
Well, she calls her Suzanne, but it's commonly known as Susanna and the Elders.
Yeah.
And go ahead to the next one because we can just stay with the next one. And what's really interesting, the story of Susanna and the Elders is Susanna goes to bathe. She's known as a very, very chaste woman. And these two old men watch her bathe and confront her and say to her that she better have sex with them or she's going to report they're going to report her to the authorities as having had sex with them and giving up her reputation. So when you see classic images of Susanna and her elders, in this case Suzanne, you see the men. Do you see that? There's Gentileschi's version, which is wonderful in the center. There's Thomas Hart Benton, who does a 20th century version. And again, you see the two men in the background. Lempicka chooses to take out the men from the story and just concentrate on Suzanne, which is an interesting choice.
Yeah, and of course the Thomas Hart Benton painting is at the de Young, so it's kind of special painting for us in San Francisco. We are kind of getting to the end of the show. This is an example of something she does in the late 30s. She calls us the refugees. She herself will flee Paris as the Nazis come to power, and she will end up moving to California, to Los Angeles. And then she will start doing all kinds of new style things in the late 30s, early 40s. This is kind of a surreal painting that she does, so not a portrait.
Actually, I want to say something. Last time Charlie mentioned it. Do you see that hand on the bottom? That's an interesting part in this one painting.
Very surreal.
Right. So she's combining, surrealism with that whole Trompe l'oeil movement, where you had people, hanging things up in a hyper realistic way. So again, it's an interesting combination of styles.
Here's another one in that same kind of vein. In some calla lilies.
And again, we see Georgia O'Keeffe doing this much better.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So she's really started to sort of lose her role as a new and innovative artist. She's basically copying other styles here at this point. I mean, it's a nice enough painting, but it's done better by other people.
There is an interesting tidbit. In 2020, a painting of Tamara de Lempicka got $21 million. And the only person that was before her was Georgia.
Only woman.
Yeah.
Yeah. So she's going to move to the United States, and she is going to continue doing these paintings that are in art. I think all three of us agree not so great, or even this one's not horrible, but you compare it to her earlier works, and you can see like this really original view, and this is just kind of, I don't know, she's not really in the Art Deco vein anymore. And she will she'll live in New York. She'll live, I believe, in Los Angeles, but she'll ultimately move to Mexico to be near her daughter Cosette, and she'll die in her sleep in 1980. And here's a commemorative bust of her in Poland. And at her request, as we said at the beginning, Tamara gets what Tamara wants, Tamara gets, and her ashes are scattered over this volcano in Mexico. Kind of fitting, I think.
Yeah, interesting.
And that volcano is very famous because
Popocatépetl.
It's supposed to be the image of the Aztec prince the Aztec warrior holding the princess as she dies, and it's the duplication of Romeo and Juliet.
So I think we have just a couple minutes more. We want to point out that she's just had so much influence on our culture, and she's remembered as the Queen of Deco. But we've got this scene from the TV show Poirot.
Poirot, right? Like, go to the one prior.
Yeah.
Before. Just go to the one just before.
Yeah.
So this one, I'm watching this show and I'm going, oh, that's a Lempicka, but I don't know that painting. And what happened is the set designers had their artists create something in the style of Lempicka to use in the show because it's so deco. And that's,
Yeah.
the deco decor is filled in Poirot.
Yeah, it's kind of,
Yeah.
and then she's got this image also, so it gets repeated, and it kind of makes us think of the Dr.
Right.
Bucquet. And so maybe we'll end with this. So Lempicka, a quote from her: "My goal was never to copy, but to create a new style, bright, luminous colors, and to scent out elegance in my models. This painting, Young Girl in Green, is the painting that they used to publicize the exhibition. But Charlie, you had a great love for this painting long before this exhibition came to San Francisco. Why don't you tell us about
yeah. I mean, probably 10 years ago, this was my wallpaper on my iPad. Still is.
Yeah, it's just a great image, and really fun to look at.
Again, look at that left hand. That's a Renaissance hand.
Yeah. So I hope we've given you all things to think about when you go to the exhibition. You should go soon. It's going to be closing, I think, a week. Is it a week?
February 9th.
Sunday?
Yeah.
February 9th.
Yeah.
So go soon.
Rodney.
Thank you, Paco. I'm glad you enjoyed it. I see some nice comments out there. I really want to thank Verena and Charlie for coming on the program and talking about this art that we all feel so connected with. Any last thoughts from either of you?
I really love these works of Lempicka too.
Good. Well,
But I
Paco,
won't be able to go there because I've been working.
oh well, maybe you can go on aren't they open late on
Thursdays.
Thursdays? They're open late, Paco,
Late.
or of course on the weekend.
Yeah, because you know what? There's a fee for that Lempicka at the Diang.
Well, let's talk. Maybe we can help you out.
But I'm not gonna go there in person,
No? Okay. Well, glad you could be in the audience today, Paco.
Yes.
And congratulations on your work. You're still with Salesforce, right?
Yes, Rodney.
Great.
The highest
Well,
tower.
well, we'll wrap this up. I'm going to turn it back to Nikki. Tell us about what's coming up next from the Community Living Campaign.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, everybody. What a great program. I just love looking at all those beautiful paintings. That was amazing.
Great to see you, Nikki.
Hi, Paco. I want to give an announcement of an important event that the Community Living Campaign is holding. It's going to be, I don't know if you can see this flyer, but it's for African American
Oh,
history.
yeah.
I know it's probably backwards. There's this man named Yanga, who was an African slave who was brought to Mexico, to Veracruz. And he was a prince in his own country. So he had a lot of leadership and strength and confidence. He led a group of other men. They led a revolt against the Spanish colonizers in Mexico. And he won this battle. So there's a town named after him in Mexico called Yanga. And his story is going to be told by Olivia Franco, who's also with the Community Living Campaign, at the Glen Park Rec Center. It's in person. It's going to be on Friday, February 7th at noon. So you're all invited. And she's a great presenter. I traveled there with her to this town called Yanga in Veracruz, and it was so interesting. There's a statue for him there, and not many people know about this hero. So on either side, either in Mexico or here. So anyhow, you're all invited, and it's in our calendar.
Thanks. That
Thank
sounds
you.
great, Nikki. Thanks for telling us about that.
Okay.
Charlie, Verena, thank you so much for doing this with me.
Very welcome.
And great turnout today. Someone asked about this being recorded. It is recorded, and it will be posted on YouTube by Friday. The good way to get information on that is to send me your email address, and I can put you on my Friday email.
I want to thank Charlie for all the pictures, because that was Charlie's choice and it was exquisite.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, it was a great selection, and also great choice of other paintings to compare her work to. So good. We wish you all well. We'll be back in 2 weeks talking about Consuelo Kanaga, this photographer who was part of the F-64 movement that is at SF MoMA. So that will be coming up next with, I'll be joined by another one of our museum guide friends, Robert Tapp.
Good.
Gonna be there, Rodney.
And
You'll be
Boomer,
there.
Boomer music is tonight. Shell told me, part 2, tonight at 6
Our
online.
friend Richie Unterberger.
Yes.
Hmm.
Yeah, Richie.
All right,
Okay,
folks.
thank
Signing
you.
off here from Tahoe.
Bye.
Thank
Bye,
you.
Nikki. Bye, Rodney.
Bye,
Thank you,
bye.
Jennifer, for
Charlie.
technical moderation.
Yeah,
Yep.
thank you, Jennifer. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.